Van drivers in the capital are looking at bills of more than £3,000 a year when the ultra-low emission zone is expanded. It's estimated there are around 30,000 non-compliant vans driving in the areas of London that will be covered by the zone from August, and not enough new vehicles to replace them all. Our political correspondent Simon Harris reports.
Stuart's yellow van is hard to miss. He runs a logistics business and makes daily journeys into London from his home in Surrey. When the ultra-low emission zone is extended, he faces a choice: buy a new van or pay the daily charge. Both options add thousands of pounds to his annual running costs.
I'm raging, if I'm honest. I'm not happy because I think it's a disgusting charge to put on people at this time. You've got coming out of a pandemic that nobody foresaw. You've got the cost of living crisis going on.
Transport for London estimates 30,000 older, more polluting vans come into Greater London every day. In theory, they all need replacing. But even if their drivers can afford to, there's a problem.
We know as of December just gone, in London and the southeast of England, there are only just over 5,000 compliant vans for sale. So if those 30,000 drivers wanted to change out of the vans that they have, then they wouldn't be able to. We have a 25,000 van shortfall.
This dealership at Stanwell in West London describes itself as a van supermarket. It's seen a surge in interest from prospective buyers. If demand outstrips supply, there's an inevitable consequence.
The more demand, the more the prices will go up. There's obviously tens of thousands of people that need to upgrade their vans. So we're expecting the prices to rise.
A spokesperson for Sadiq Khan said the Mayor has been clear that the decision to expand the ultra-low emission zone London-wide was one of the hardest he's had to make. But with around 4,000 Londoners still dying from toxic air, it was a necessary one. Sadiq Khan is determined to push ahead with his plan to introduce the extended ULEZ at the end of August. But he's now facing a possible legal challenge from some outer London boroughs. Next week, the Mayor is expected to announce details of a £110 million scrappage scheme aimed at small businesses, charities and Londoners on low incomes. Drivers from outside Greater London can't apply.
If the Mayor wants to press ahead with his ULEZ scheme and extending it to the outer boroughs, then we want to see a much more generous scrappage scheme and to extend the time that it takes to roll out.
Drivers eligible for the scrappage scheme, which Stuart isn't, can apply for a grant of £5,000. But even the cheapest new van costs more than £20,000. Simon Harris, ITV News, Stanwell.
Detectives looking for a missing couple and their newborn baby now believe they may be staying in a tent. Simon Harris is outside New Scotland Yard for us now. Simon, what do we know?
Charlene, 2 nights ago, temperatures in some parts of London fell as low as -8. It's hard to believe why anyone would choose to sleep in a tent with a newborn baby at this time of year. But that's precisely what police think Constance Martin and Mark Gordon are doing with their new baby. The police have released new CCTV pictures of the couple, showing them being dropped off by a taxi on Whitechapel Road on the evening of Saturday, June the 7th. Gordon is pictured then coming out of a nearby branch of Argos carrying 2 bags. The police now know that he bought a blue 2-man tent, 2 sleeping bags and 2 pillows. Later, the couple are seen on another part of Whitechapel Road. She's pushing a child's buggy, he's carrying the bags. Both are wearing masks. In Adler Street nearby, they swap roles. He's now got the buggy, she's got the bags. Finally, the cameras pick them up in Brick Lane, and this is the last sighting of them so far.
Gone down to -6, -7. A newborn baby at that, on the 7th would have only been 2 or 3 days old. We know that babies should be kept in a warm, in an environment, at that age. And clearly today, the significant risk, and my plea is to find the baby because, with these weather conditions, that's where the risk lies.
OK, Simon, do police have any idea where they are now?
No, they could be camping anywhere, so the police want anyone who's out walking or in a public open space, if they see a tent, to give them a call. Constance Martin has been estranged from her family pretty much ever since she began her relationship with Mark Gordon. He's a convicted sex offender who served 20 years in prison in America after he was convicted of rape. And the police say they're primarily concerned for the well-being of their baby.
OK, Simon, thank you.
Good evening. We must improve dramatically for Londoners. That's the message tonight from the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police as he faced a grilling at City Hall over how the force has been handling the cases of corrupt criminal officers. Sir Mark Rowley did offer 2 apologies to the victims of serial rapist David Carrick and to those who suffered at the hands of a Safer Schools constable in Enfield, whose crimes have only just been highlighted after he pleaded guilty to sexual offences involving children. But as more bad apples in uniform are identified, Sir Mark did have a stark warning that we are only going to be hearing more painful truths as stones are turned over. With the latest, here's our political correspondent Simon Harris.
Police Constable Hussein Chihab was supposed to protect school children. Instead, he was a paedophile in uniform and allowed to work in a school at Enfield in North London.
Young people in Enfield have a right to go to school with the knowledge that they will be kept safe. And what is absolutely sickening is that PC Chihab committed some of these crimes whilst he was a Safer School officer in our borough.
This latest scandal involving a Met police officer emerged during a court case where PC Chihab pleaded guilty. Wood Green Crown Court was told that Chihab had been involved in a relationship with a 15-year-old girl before he joined the Met. He then committed further offences after being assigned to work in a local secondary school as a Safer Schools officer. The 22-year-old admitted a string of child sex offences, including 4 counts of sexual activity with a girl aged 13 to 15, 3 counts of making indecent photographs of a child, and 1 count of engaging in sexual communication with a child.
Whilst he was in the police, he was taking part in what you might sort of broadly describe as grooming activity. It is ghastly, and it's going to be really, obviously, you've got to apologise to the victims. They shouldn't be facing that at the hands of a police officer.
Chihab joined the Met in March 2020 at the start of the pandemic. One former senior officer told ITV News online vetting instead of face-to-face interviews might have been a factor.
Any questions that he would have been asked, i.e. any affiliations to neo-Nazi groups, anything to do with extreme pornography, children, anything like that, he would have ticked the box and said no, and it would not have been subject to scrutiny. The vetting process, once again, has failed this family.
Last week, David Carrick, an armed protection officer, was unmasked as a serial rapist. Today, the Met Commissioner revealed police officers are appearing in court on serious charges at the rate of 2 or 3 a week.
Most weeks there's 2 or 3 officers going to court for criminal cases, which tends to be a mix of sort of dishonesty, violence, and sort of violence against women and girls type offences, domestic abuse, sexual offences, etc. We have to prepare for more painful stories as we confront the issues that we face.
PC Hussein Chihab is still a serving police officer, but will be put through a fast-track misconduct process, which is expected to see him being sacked. He'll be sentenced at the Crown Court in March.
Simon, this is the first time we've heard from the Commissioner since he announced his 9-point plan to reform the Met last week. He's got a lot on his hands, hasn't he?
Yes, and Sir Mark said today that one of the measures he's brought in, a telephone hotline for members of the public to ring in and report dishonest, corrupt or dangerous police officers, is likely to lead to even more cases. And that admission today that there are already 2 or 3 cases a week going before the courts was quite an eye-opener. Sir Mark concedes that the Met just simply hasn't been strong enough investigating its own. They haven't applied the same ruthlessness, as he put it, to their own integrity as they apply to the criminals.
And what have Enfield Council had to say about this?
Well, we heard earlier from the Conservative opposition leader on Enfield Council. Tonight, the Labour leader has issued a statement emphasising that all of the offences committed by PC Chihab were outside the borough of Enfield. She also said there's no evidence or suggestion that any of the children, the victims, were pupils at the Enfield school where PC Chihab worked.
OK, Simon, thank you very much. Good evening. Rail bosses are carrying out an urgent safety review tonight after overcrowding at London Bridge left passengers fearing they would be crushed. Hundreds of people were crammed onto packed trains, escalators and platforms during rush hour. Politicians and passengers alike say South Eastern's new slimmed-down timetable is to blame. This afternoon, the company apologised, admitting it was unacceptable, but the local MP says the constant chaos has to stop. Our political correspondent Simon Harris has more.
It was the moment rush hour became a crush hour, and for commuters caught up in the overcrowding at London Bridge, it was unnerving and scary. Trains came to a standstill after a passenger fell onto the track at Hither Green in south-east London. Vanessa, a college lecturer on her way home to Tunbridge, was trapped at the top of an escalator.
People started shouting, move, move, and trying to push forwards because they were frightened. And I could see the feet just by my head above me trying to scrabble as the escalator was moving, and they couldn't do anything. So I started running backwards to try and avoid falling down.
Passengers were falling over each other, staff were doing nothing. A passenger had to hit the emergency stop button on an escalator to prevent people being crushed.
I was really, really scared, and for a good half hour afterwards, my legs just wouldn't stop shaking.
The logjam of commuters lasted for 45 minutes. You're very lucky no one got seriously injured, aren't you?
Well, the implementation of the crowd control measures are plans to make sure that people are safe. Restricting access to the platforms is, part of our standard procedures to make sure that the platforms do not become overcrowded.
Why one of central London's main commuter stations couldn't cope with sudden disruption to services is now the subject of a heated debate. The train company South Eastern says London Bridge has suddenly become more crowded during the evening rush hour for no obvious reason other than changing travel patterns. In the last few weeks, the number of passengers passing through the station between 5 and 6:30 has jumped from 20,000 to nearer 30,000. But many commuters believe recent timetable changes and cuts to services are to blame. On Twitter, Suzanne said hundreds of passengers in a crush at London Bridge due to the changes you introduced with no consultation in December. Phoebe asked South Eastern, remind me again how your new timetable is so much better. Never once experienced this under the old system, where passengers were split between London Bridge and Cannon Street. And Ros observed, not only are 90% of my trains late, the platforms are becoming increasingly dangerous.
They told me and my constituents that this wouldn't happen, and that and it has, and they said that it would improve the service, and it hasn't. We've had constant chaos since the new timetable came in December.
Tonight, Network Rail and South Eastern said they were carrying out a safety review. Tellingly, perhaps, South Eastern will run more rush hour trains from Monday. Simon Harris, ITV News, London Bridge.